Hello, and welcome to one of the bonus stories from White Album 2. This is Todokanai Koi, The Love That Would Not Reach Has Reached. So, this is one of the official stories that was released and written by Fumiaki Maruto. He was the original writer of White Album 2. So, everything in here can be considered 100% canon. This is just something like a bonus to the game itself. So, the Action Committee Chairman's assistant? Ogiso? Are you perhaps the guitarist? White Album. A melody that connected Music Room Number 1 and Music Room Number 2. That evening on the rooftop, with a month remaining before the school festival, one might call it a coincidence, one might call it an inevitability, one might call it a miracle. The first song for just the three of them. He played guitar, she filled it in with piano, and she sang. And what is this? Well, a new song, the third one, our last number. Oh. So this is all about that third song, the song Todokanai Koi, the one which Haruki ended up writing, and then Kazusa took over, put it to piano, and then they kind of handed it over to Setsuna. And honestly, it was a little bit of a lie on a lot of accounts, but it is a beautiful song. Nearly a month later, on a Friday, one person became two became three, and at last they had reached the day before the school festival concert. Kitahara wrote the lyrics, I set them to music, and you're going to sing, Ogiso, a song for just the three of us. One more song, just for the three of them, was completed here. Chapter 1, Haruki. That's not really a problem. I told you, there's a second guitar. No, I told you, I'm not doing it. Half a year before the school festival in early May. So this is a big jump back. We're revealing exactly what had happened at the Light Music Club before everything went down during the whole writing of Todokanai Koi. 4 male students were gathered in music room number 1 after school, and a heated argument was unfolding. It's fine, Haruki. Even if we start now, we'll have more than enough time. Quit trying to pacify me, Takea. I know best what my own abilities are. It's true that your skills right now are pretty hopeless. There's not much likelihood of a drastic improvement in half a year, but the school festival is just a festival, right? I'm not playing. Absolutely not. No way. No, to be more precise, just now, out of all of them, only 2 of them were arguing, Takea, Izuka, and Haruki Kitahara. The other 3 around watched their quarrel from a distance, playing the instruments they held, fiddling with their phones, relaxing with a fairly unbothered attitude. I mean, to be fair, Haruki and Takea fight all the time, and they're still best friends, so I guess they're kind of used to it. It doesn't seem that consequential right now. This was because the current discussion was more or less inconsequential. See what I mean? Having been born out of a much more serious discussion concerning choosing and inviting a vocalist. Concerning the promotion of Haruki Kitahara, substitute guitarist, to an official member. The air guitar, maybe. Takea, I hope you aren't telling me to be a street performer. This impromptu band, formed merely 1 month earlier, the Light Music Club, was a gathering of showy, superficial guys who planned on flaunting their own coolness in the school festival 6 months later, aiming for the arrival of the last-minute popularity that came at the end of one's school life. With these extremely trivial, flimsy, light motives, it was formed. Boys will be boys, I guess. However, the members who originally had been steeped in the opportunistic ideology of, if we play instruments, then we'll be popular with girls, having now sacrificed themselves to this dogma, had somehow or another mostly become, more or less, an experienced band lineup. When it was asked whether the one exception to this mostly the guitar abilities of Haruki, who joined after being invited by his friend, would come to something good after half a year, everybody couldn't help feeling doubtful. What a run-on sentence. What a terrible... There was like 4 subjects in that one sentence. But it's the school festival, right? Even you will probably want a girl or 2 by then. Right, Haruki? What do you mean 2? I'm not you, Takaya. No, forget about that. The point is, I'm not playing. Haruki. This foreshadowing. Oh my goodness. He'll want a girl or 2. Maruto-san is evil. He is evil because he knows we know what happens. He definitely put that in there on purpose. Even Haruki, who grasped the mood of his surroundings more clearly than anyone, would probably thoroughly reject this proposal from Takaya, even though there was pure friendship in his attempts to lure him in. But there is just one thing I want to do. Can I tell you that? What? Right at that moment, as an alternative suggestion, he put forth this single hope, his heart's desire, because Haruki knew. In order to convey what he really wanted to do, first, he had to give the other person a feeling of obligation, forming up an atmosphere for drawing out concessions and compromises. He knew that this was an effective method. He's very methodological. Methodological? He's very scheming, Haruki, and not in an evil way, but he's smart. He knows how to get what he wants. Ah, that might be good, huh? It would. A way of showing some of our real color. It would definitely get all the people at the school festival worked up and excited. And so, Haruki's underhanded, no, clever strategy seemed to have borne fruit. The other members, who until now had been half-heartedly pretending to support Takaya, when presented with this humble alternative suggestion, threw their support behind it assertively, relief showing plainly on their faces. Because, to them, Haruki was not even remotely a hindrance to the group. That's kind of them. That's really nice. And Haruki doesn't even want to play in the festival anyway, so of course he's not a hindrance. Their abilities as band members were what they were, but to a club that had just formed this year with no backing, the rumored leverage of the secret school festival action committee chairman and his well-established political strength were unquestionably crucial. Okay, well, this is a little silly. Haruki's got a big head over being the committee chairman. Like, oh, the power, the political leverage. No. There's nothing like that. He's just literally doing favors for teachers. So, any objections? What about you, Haruki? You good with things being like this? It's not about things being like this, Takaya. Takaya, the only one out of the group with a slight but truly vexed expression, was faced by Haruki, who answered with his own slightly but truly satisfied expression. This is the culmination of my 3 years here. Huh. And that night, taking a break from studying in his room, Haruki opened up a new notebook, wrote title on the first line, and having finished those 5 letters, he flung his pencil away and looked toward the sky. Ooh, big mood. Like writing "the" at the top of a paper. Writing lyrics? What the hell have I talked myself into? Writing lyrics for an original number to be played at the school festival. When it came to the school festival concert, what Haruki had wanted was this behind-the-scenes position. In a sense, a very important one. Aw, he wants to be a part of things, but he didn't want to be in the limelight. I could understand that. At the time, thinking from the perspective of his grades in modern Japanese class, he had judged that this part would suit him best, and believed it to be a solid choice. But the fact that he had used his academic performance as a basis for evaluation in the first place may in and of itself have been proof that he wasn't cut out to be in a band. If I at least had a question to answer. Yes, if this were like a problem on a test. I mean, to be fair, you could try to think of it that way, if that gave you inspiration. Like, you could look up questions about life, and then try to answer it like that, and then try to get some good poetic lyrics out of that. Wouldn't be a bad idea for him to start there. If something like state the emotions of the main character at this time were written on the blank page, Haruki could easily cram the paper full of detailed, scathing critiques of every single problem with the character's attitude and behavior, even going beyond what the question asked. But now that he was thinking about it, even that required at least an example sentence to work with. And so, having finally realized his own extreme ineptitude in devising such an example sentence, Haruki still spent an hour copy-pasting bits of lyrics from recent major songs he knew and stringing them together, only to shriek in frustration and rip them up in the space of a second. Oh no! It's still effort. You always see musicians and people like that crumpling up the papers and throwing them into the wastebasket. It's kind of a stereotype, so I guess it's not that bad. But still. Then, reflecting that plagiarism was a bad thing, he roused himself up to write again, seriously this time, using his own words, and wrote nothing for a further hour. The fact was, none of the words that came to his mind from his own experiences created images that could be conveyed by melody of a guitar or the rhythm of the drums. Haruki's daily life to this point was completely incompatible with rock music. I love that line. That line is beautiful. His life being incompatible with rock music. If I were to be writing like an essay on this, I would definitely include that. And that's what spurred him on to do this in the first place. He wasn't dissatisfied with society. He couldn't put his gloomy thoughts about his family into words. Love, then, but there was no such thing in his ashen school life. I'll do it tomorrow. In the end, after wasting 3 hours, Haruki glanced at the clock. It was almost 2 a.m, then put the lyrics notebook sitting before him into a drawer and took down a reference book from his bookshelf. And the time passed, and August came. One evening, toward the middle of the summer holidays, Haruki rushed at full speed up the stairs of his apartment building, flew into his room, and began rooting around in his desk drawer, without even stopping to get changed or dry off his waterfalls of sweat. That's disgusting. Waterfalls of sweat. I mean, why even mention his sweaty pits anyway? Just say without stopping to get changed. That's so gross. Found it. And finally, after throwing all of the tidily organized contents into disarray, he found the single notebook resting at the very back of the drawer and held it above his head with a roar of victory. This was his moment of reunion with the lyrics notebook after 3 months. In the beginning, he felt embarrassed, trying to assemble words out of emotions. On top of that, his failure to make any significant improvement with the guitar had caused him to start losing passion for the band. Meanwhile, even though he was just supposed to be assisting, his duties as a festival committee chair were growing more and more hectic, leaving him little time to think. They're just giving example after example about why Haruki is a busybody at this point. I mean, we saw it at the beginning of the introductory chapter. So many people were depending on him, and he thrived off of that. He thrived off of being needed and helping people, but not necessarily in a generous way, but more in like a, I can scold you because you didn't do as good as I could have done kind of way. You know what I mean? And so, with one thing and another, For the past 3 months, the lyric composition for the original festival number had not progressed whatsoever. But today, something had happened that renewed his motivation. He had managed to play a song all the way through. His favorite song had become the one song he could play. Oh, and we all know what it is. That excitement, that uplift, reawakened Haruki's desire to commit his emotions to words. He didn't care if it wasn't in the current popular style. He didn't care if it was outdated. He didn't care if it wasn't rock. All he knew was Western-style pop anyway, so there was no helping that. And love? Even if he had never felt it, he could picture it now. To be lonely. What Haruki tried to picture was his ideal girl, who existed only in his imagination. For example, that worn-out sense of distance between those who sit next to each other in class. An aloof girl who had nothing to do with anyone, the kind of setting that would draw the interest of the listeners. I mean, it says that it exists only in his imagination, but at the same time, this girl 1,000% already exists in reality. But it made for a scene that was convenient for both creator and listener, directing kind words at oneself and nobody else. Couldn't help but wonder. And so, a particular character began spilling from these odds and ends that he spun together, so much that he managed to fool even himself. The girl he was picturing was, without a doubt, a real girl. The one next to him. You can't fool yourself. He fully knows who he's thinking about. I mean, he has such a ridiculous inspiration. The mental gymnastics his brain does to protect him from his own thoughts is so crazy. The one in the next desk over, who never had anything to do with anyone. But today, she had become his guitar teacher, this classmate with long black hair. Wait. And somehow, he had written a song. Naturally, as he looked at these overly imaginative lyrics, Haruki gave a strained smile through a cold sweat, but he still nodded in approval, took out a red pen, and began making revisions. Correcting a piece of work according to set rules was Haruki's area of expertise. First, he made the content as ambiguous as possible. He made the gender of the person singing and that of the object of their feelings unclear. That's pretty smart. He didn't use first person, he restricted it to second person. You. Because the hero of this song was not Haruki Kitahara. Because the you was not Kazusa Toma, the one who sat next to Haruki and taught him how to play the guitar. This was the most common of stories. An ordinary person longing for someone they could never reach. Aww. It's a beautiful mindset, and even knowing who it is, it's still beautiful, but it's so funny that he's like, this isn't about me and Kazusa, but it's exactly about him and Kazusa. Well, I figure that should do it. Haruki looked at the notebook, the text so covered in red that no one apart from him would be able to make head or tail of it. Maybe heads or tails, right? And nodded, slightly embarrassed, but quite satisfied. For just a moment, he pictured the annoyed face of the girl he had used as his model, and he almost lost his nerve, but it faded quickly. All right, let's see about the second one. Haruki vigorously turned the page of the notebook, unaware that the sun had long since set. Oof, and I bet the waterfalls of sweat are still stuck to his shirt. So the interesting thing about this is now it shifts perspectives. Now it shifts over to Kazusa's perspective in chapter 2. So, oh right, I almost forgot. Read this. What kind of joke are you pulling this time? If you can, I want you to make this guy's real wish come true. What? With this exchange, Takaya Izuka, temporary head of the Light Music Club, gave her a notebook wearing an uncharacteristically serious expression. So there has been a time skip, of course, because now Kazusa is part of the Light Music Club, and this is when Takaya is actually showing her the lyrics. So good on Takaya for doing this really nice thing for Haruki, and then good on Kazusa for following through with it. Was the first word she said, or rather, the first sound she made after opening it. You're telling me he came up with this? I don't even... And the next sound she made was this. A laugh that was refreshing, in a sense, though it could have been taken for sneering or snickering. I mean, a lot of what Kazusa said could be taken as that. Kazusa Toma, Hojo High School, 3rd year, Class E. She was a tall girl with long, straight black hair that was a point of pride. Or rather, it was clear that she had chosen to grow it out herself. Or she's just lazy. Incidentally, while she had an aloof personality and did not socialize with anyone, she was a kind girl at the core, with a meddlesome classmate who couldn't play guitar sitting next to her. That's a harsh description. Mid-November. A late autumn night, a week before the school festival concert. And with that, before we get into the true history there, we will stop off there for now. So, thank you so much for joining me on this part of one of the after stories, or I guess the prequel stories to White Album 2, and I'll be back to you with part 2 shortly. So until then, hope you take care. See you!